Warren coming in. Everybody do okay in the storm? I'm not even going to ask Neil. Neil's just sitting there in the sunshine while the rest of us are digging out. Neil, you there? Can you hear us?
Can you get the background off?
Yeah.
And very good. Warren, how you doing? Good. Did everybody come in muted? I thought I had that thing. That's weird. I don't have that setting on. You just never know.
I think it's a new thing with Zoom's update that you come in muted.
As a default.
Meetings. I think so.
Okay, well, I feel less bad about having to mute everybody then. That's, and somehow Julie knew that already. Julie was on top of it. She was like, I know that. I know all this stuff. All right. Well, it's great to see all of you. It's great to have Cantor Lauren back. And Cantor Lauren, Aaron hopefully had a nice New Year's we were talking about, and a little bit lower key than perhaps the young people are used to. But, it's we missed you last week and we're happy to have you back. And at this point, I'm just going to mute everybody. Sorry again. Forgive me for that. And we're going to welcome up onto the bima, so to speak, Cantor Lauren, who's going to help us to begin our service by lighting and blessing our Shabbat candles. You can follow along on page 120 in our prayer books as well.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Okay, and Lauren's wonderful assistant, Aaron, will now take the candles away. He does a great job with that. And Cantor Lauren, I think you've got something for us to warm up with tonight, but I'm forgetting exactly what. So we'll give the mic back over to you, and you let us know.
All right. Oh, thought I lost my pick. Okay, we're going to turn to page 128.
To page 130, the Funaranana at the very top of the page.
Lechu neranena l'Adonai nairia letzorishenu nekadma fanav betodah bizmirot nariya lo
page 131, Shiru Ladonai, the first few lines in Hebrew in the middle of the page.
Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru Adonai shir chadash.
We'll turn now to page 132, or Zarua, the last Hebrew paragraph at the bottom of the page.
Hoy zaru ala tzadik uleishei lev simcha. Hoy zaru ala tzadik uleishei lev simcha. Simchu tzadikim Adonai vehodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim Adonai vehodu lezecher kodsho.
We'll turn now to page 134, Zamru Ladonai, at the very top of the page.
Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor b'kol zimra. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor b'kol zimra.
We'll turn now to page 135, Romamu, the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu behar kodesho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu behar kodesho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai
page 138 for Lecha Dodi. And a reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs today.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor וזכור בדיבור אחד, כי השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת בתחילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו בנאכה, כי מקור הברכה, בראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי שיר דברי, כבור ארני עלי נפילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום התרא בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Turn now to page 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בעלילות, עלה אסור ועלה דבר, עלה היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. צדיק התמר יפרח, כארץ בלבנון ישגה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובו מסבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולות עמו.
We're now to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתקדש ויתקדש מרבה, בלמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם מעמיה יתמרך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשא בריחו, לילה מן כל מרחתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם בעלמא, ויאמרו אמן.
Turn now to page 146 for the Baruch.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed Le'olam Va'ed Ay 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 nay ay nay 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 ay nay nay ay nay 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 ay nay ay nay ay nay nay
Turn now to page 149. We'll read together in English. This here. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב הרבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל חפת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו למדתו על כן אדוני אלוהינו לשופטנו ופולנו שיח בתוכך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו מאהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Please join me on page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, Adonai Elohechem Emet. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn back to Cantor Lauren and turn to page 158, Nichamoch. To Hashkivenu. Cantor, are we top of 161 or page 160? You let us know.
I'm not sure. In my notes, I have 160,
one of the two of those,
maybe
everybody.
161.
It's either top of 161 or it's 160. We'll go with what you got.
I'm sorry. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be a shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu leshalom. Ve'ha'amidenu shomreinu lechaim. Ufros aleinu sukat
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו השכיבנו לשלום. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
Turn now to page 162 of Vishamru.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת לנפש, שבת לנפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
In a moment, Keter will lead us on page 164 to help us begin the Amidah. And as always, when we're finished, you can go at your own pace, and then we'll gather back together in just a couple of minutes.
Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי אגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips and my mouth may declare your praise. Ay, 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 ay.
Okay. And we're going to turn now to page 180 as we end Oseh Shalom together. And we'll turn it back over to Cantor Lauren. Again, will lead us on the bottom of page 108. And as we prepare now for our Misha Berach, our prayer of healing, we'll turn to page 371. And I'll begin by reading our Misha Berach list and invite those who are on the Zoom to add names if you'd like in the chat. And of course, those who are watching at home to add the names of your loved ones out loud or just hold them in your hearts. Tonight in our community, we're thinking of Linda Gesford, Chaim ben Yosef Fechava, Norma Paulsak, Dina Batchana, Bradford Benzi Tepper, Cecilia Hirsch, Len Tinney, Tzipora Ahava, Gittel Bat Shmuel Ve'aviva, Bruce Steger, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Jeff Baker, David Tasher, Jim Cohn, Monique Rathbun, Lindsay Epstein, Dolores Michka, Sylvia Orn, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Chaim Live, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollock, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Bagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Adobasha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem and Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kosoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivya, Peretz Ben Yehuda, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Leah, Justin Banner, Tzipora Ahaba Bat Yehudit Rachel, Jane Beard Cass, Amy Cass, Steve Levine, Ira Badris, Ephraim Raphael Ben Esther, and Myra Maslin. And of course, we'll consider those that have been added in the chat and those that we're thinking of at home. And we'll turn back to Cantor Lauren as we are on page 371 for our Misha Berach.
Of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So tonight, I want to speak to you about this week's Torah portion. It's known as Parshat Bo. Bo means come in or to come in Hebrew. And it's something of an unusual phrase, an unusual beginning to the Parsha. So I want to begin with a teaching from the Zohar, which is the sort of central text of Jewish mysticism. And then from there, I want to go to a teaching actually, may seem like an unusual source for us, but from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, as I said it backwards, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who, whatever we may feel about, the movement and things of that nature, was a remarkable teacher of Torah and occasionally has some things to say. And this is one that actually is rather deep and rather important. So let me begin by the teaching from the Zohar. So it asks a fundamental question, and this is usually the case for the rabbis when they notice something in the grammar, in the structure of the Hebrew itself, which seems unusual, right? That if there was a clearer way to say it, they ask the question and sort of try to figure out what's at stake here. So the Zohar posits, why is it written Bo el Paro in Hebrew, come into Pharaoh? Ought it not rather have said Lech le Paro, go to Pharaoh, right? Which would make a lot of sense and would be what is being told to Moshe up until this point, which is basically Lech, go. And instead we have a very different word here at the beginning of the Parsha, Bo, come into Pharaoh. So what does the Zohar teach? It says this is to indicate that God brought Moses into a chamber within a chamber, into the abode of the supernal, which is a fancy word for saying basically something that exists in the heavens, something otherworldly, which is another way of basically saying sort of God's realm or a godly realm, right? Into the abode of the supernal mighty serpent that is the soul of Egypt, from whom many lesser serpents emanate. So in other words, Moshe was brought by God to be face to face with a identified sort of serpent deity, which they say, at least in this case, was at the soul of who the Egyptians were in that time. And Moses was afraid to approach Pharaoh because his roots, as they say, are in the supernal regions, right, in the heavenly regions. And Moshe was only really comfortable with approaching Pharaoh's subsidiary systems, in other words, his corporeal self, right? That eventually, even though Moshe was reticent to go to Pharaoh in the first place, by this point in the Torah, they've already gone several times. They've already had 8 or 7 of the 10 plagues have already taken place. So here we're seeing something on a different kind of level. And the Zohar then concludes, when God saw that Moses feared the serpent, he said, Bo el Paro, come, I'm going to show you not the person that you are concerned with, but the deeper thing, whatever is animating the Pharaoh, whatever is animating all of this terrible stuff that's happening to our people. So this is actually a somewhat unscrutable text. It asks more questions than it answers. And so this is where the Rebbe's teaching comes in as an extra layer. And so it's a little bit long, but you'll forgive me and hopefully understand where I'm going with it pretty quickly. So what does the Rebbe say? What does this all mean? He says that it wasn't enough to merely go to Pharaoh, Lech el Paro. Moses had to enter into the very core of who Pharaoh was, into the very root of his power. Who is Pharaoh, asks the Rebbe, and what does he represent? What is his innermost essence, so to speak? What is it that Moshe is being brought into? And why did Moses dread confronting Pharaoh in his palace, if, after all, God himself had sent him there? And how does coming into Pharaoh, as opposed to going to Pharaoh, hold the key to the exodus from Egypt and the liberation of the soul of humankind? Some big questions. So he goes on. The prophet Ezekiel describes Pharaoh as, quote, the great serpent who crouches in the midst of his streams, who says, my river is my own, and I have made myself. So this is a famous phrase from, actually, I believe, last week's Haftarah from Ezekiel 29:3, in which basically the Pharaoh is described really like a crouching serpent in the waters. And the key phrase is, the river is my own and I have made myself. In other words, says the Rebbe, the evil of Pharaoh is not defined by the promiscuity that characterized the pagan cults of Egypt, nor by his enslavement and torture of millions of Israelites, nor by his bathing in the blood of slaughtered children, but rather by his egocentrism, by his regarding his own self as the source and standard for everything. In other words, right, he's saying what made Pharaoh so insidious, what made Pharaoh such a terrible character that needed to be confronted, wasn't even because of his actions, right, the things that he had done or other assumed reasons why, but actually because of a deeper sickness, which the Rebbe teaches here, is the concept of egocentrism, right? This idea that I made the river and I am of the river I made myself, right? That level of egocentrism is really at the very source of everything that is happening and everything that Pharaoh is doing. So the Rebbe continues, for this, he says, egocentrism is the root of all evil. Self-centeredness might seem a benign sin compared to the acts of cruelty and depravity to which man can sink, but it is the source and essence of them all. When a person considers the self and its needs to be the ultimate arbiter of right and wrong, his morality, and he might initially be a very moral person, is a sham. Such a person is ultimately capable of committing any act, should he regard it as crucial to himself or to his self-defined vision of reality. The Rebbe continues, when God commanded Moses, Bo el Paro, come to Pharaoh, Moses had already been going to Pharaoh for many months, but he had been dealing with Pharaoh in his various manifestations. Pharaoh the pagan, Pharaoh the oppressor of Israel, Pharaoh the self-styled God. But now he was being told to enter into the essence of Pharaoh, into the very soul of evil. Moses didn't fear the evil of Pharaoh, so to speak. If God had sent him, God would protect him, at least so the logic goes. But the Rebbe says, when God told him to enter into the essence of Pharaoh, he was terrified. Said God to Moses at that point, Bo el Paro, come into Pharaoh, come with me, and together we will enter the great serpent's palace. Together we will penetrate the self-worship that is the heart of evil. Together we will discover that there is neither substance nor reality to evil, that all it is the misappropriation of the divine in humankind. If this truth is too terrifying for a human being to confront on their own, Bo Eli, come with me, and I will guide you. I will take you into the innermost chamber of Pharaoh's soul, until you come face to face with evil's most zealously guarded secret, that it does not, in truth, exist. When you learn this secret, no evil will ever defeat you. When you learn this secret, you and your people will truly be free. So the Rebbe is teaching something actually rather complicated here, and one that we may not all necessarily agree with, but he's basically arguing that what is God's real teaching here is that Pharaoh is not the evil, the things that Pharaoh is doing is not the evil, and evil itself is not even really evil. That all of it manifests out of a deeper sickness, and that deeper sickness, as he describes it, is an egocentrism, is a self-centeredness, is a focus on one individual, and I think not just an individual, right, on a collective conscience that says, I am more important, or I am the creator of my own reality, I am the determiner of my own future, and ultimately what I think and what I want and what I believe to be real is what is real, and I'm going to act upon it there. And so part of the challenge, of course, right, what is being said here, and obviously I don't think I have to go very far to connect it to a noble event of the past week, right, the commemoration of January 6th and of the insurrection and the attack on the Capitol. And while, again, we may be picturing one particular person in our mind as we're talking about this, right, what I think the Rebbe is teaching here is that, again, it's our focus tends to be on the wrong thing. Right? We focus on an individual, we focus on a cult of people who worship that individual, but in the end, what we're really dealing with here is a greater sickness, a sickness that we have to understand didn't emerge on January 6th of last year, okay? And it didn't even occur in the last couple of years. It's a sickness that has prevailed since the time of Pharaoh, since before the time of Pharaoh, since really the moment human beings came into the world to some degree. This has been a part of us. This way in which we tend to see the world and the way in which we tend to create our own sense of right and wrong, our own sense of reality. And what the Rebbe is basically saying is that we need to be very, very cautious of understanding that what we describe as evil, what we describe as sort of evil behaviors, those are important words. Those are words that have value. They're things that are, I think, appropriately attributed to certain moments in history and to certain people. But in the end, what is it that drives those people or those moments in history? I mean, that's really the fundamental question that I think the Rebbe is positing here, is how are we to understand the kinds of things that we saw unfold a year ago? And how are we to understand the fact that a year later, we don't seem to have made any particular progress in understanding just how dangerous that event was and just how dangerous the ideas behind it ultimately are and represent. That when an individual or 20 million people can create their own sense of reality, can believe their own sense of truth, and all usually for the purposes of being right and the others being wrong, of having their way as opposed to right what may be a reality that they're not comfortable with. Right, these are things that again didn't just happen on January 6th; they happen every single day. And in this country, it is the greatest sickness that we are facing. Right, as a human population, it is the greatest sickness that we are facing. And whether we come to understand that or not, everything else is basically treating a scrape when we have a gaping wound in a different part of the body. Right, we're not really addressing root cause. We're not really addressing the fundamental questions at bay. We're really discussing a sort of historical event. And as much brilliance and eloquence as I heard the other day from a number of different people about what took place on January 6th, it sort of, to me, it kept falling into the category again of the realm solely of politics, right? Of designation of one group and another group, of ideologies. But I heard nothing really of the soul, right? Of the spirit, of the collective soul and spirit of our country. Nobody, I think, that really got to the essence of what I think is our greatest sickness at the moment, and something that needs our greatest attention. And while Pharaoh obviously is a paradigm of evil, so to speak, in our minds, when you read the Torah itself, when you read the commentaries, we understand more and more that Pharaoh was like any other person, was a human being who was corrupted from the very inside out. And everything that was done was from that inner corruption. And I think that, again, it's easy to identify an individual and place everything on the individual, even if that individual is responsible. But I think that there is a greater responsibility at hand as well, to ask ourselves how we can get to that point in which people can literally take up arms against their own government, against their own seat of their power. And I think ultimately speaking, this idea of sort of how do we get past it? How do we get beyond it? How do you ultimately, sort of destroy the idea of egocentrism and self-centeredness in the world? These are not simple questions. And I wish that it was as simple as saying this is all we have to do. But I would just posit the idea that, part of our collective way of responding to a sort of cultural egocentrism is to begin within, right? We have our own work to do first within ourselves and within our own community and with our own people. And we have to really understand and internalize the idea that whether we want to acknowledge it or not, every single human being falls into this trap at some point or another in their life, in which the sole focus becomes me, myself, I, what I believe, what I need, where I want to go, what I expect from others. In my lifetime, I expected that we would be progressing in the opposite direction, right? Towards a greater awareness, a greater sense of collective responsibility, a greater sense of our responsibility to ideas, especially those that underpin the foundation of our country. And what I have seen, of course, as we all have seen, is that, as I said, a year has gone by in which we had plenty of time for reflection and for growth. And yet, if anything, actually, it is sort of proven to be the opposite, that we are even further entrenched. We are even further in a place in which we cannot see or hear or act upon. Because again, I think the real essence of this teaching is that we're all Moshe, right? We're actually all terrified to confront that inner reality. We're terrified to really ask those questions of ourselves and of others and say, is this behavior, is what we are doing, is the way we are acting, is the way that we live our lives, one that is focused on an awareness of a greater good, of a connection to each other, or is it driven by petty selfishness and petty egocentrism and petty self-centeredness, the kinds of things that drive and animate our decisions and drive not just our decisions, but our entire sense of what reality ultimately is. And I just think whether we believe the Rebbe's teaching or not, it might be sort of hyperbolic to suggest that there really is no evil in the world and that it's all just as he says, right, just want to make sure, right, is the misappropriation of the divine in mankind, right, is the misuse of the gifts that God has given us, is really something I think for all of us to contemplate over this Shabbat, and hopefully to contemplate as we move forward in our lives. and really to understand, as ignoble and awful as the experience was a year ago, and quite frankly, as heartbreaking as it was to see, the having to commemorate it in the way that we've commemorated, in which it'll become a part of our shared and collective national history. I would like to see all of the pomp and all of the ritual piece around it to be matched with a equal amount of self-reflection on the part of every single individual in this country, and to really ask ourselves, just as here, right, just as the Rebbe is teaching us, that really what we're getting to is fundamental questions, to ask ourselves how we got here, and more importantly, how are we going to remove ourselves from this space that we have ultimately created for ourselves, the evil that we have allowed to fester in our very bones and in our very essence. And I think, as I always say, and I mean this very seriously, to me, that starts with study. It starts with self-reflection. It starts with getting into really, again, our spiritual selves, right? Coming into, in essence, right, if it says Bo El Paro, right, that we have to find that sort of part of ourselves, right, the Pharaoh that exists in all of us, and to really get into that and to really address it first internally and then to manifest it externally. So with that, I hope that some of this made some sense to you, and I really wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and a Shabbat in particular of, I hope, meaning and deep thought. So with that, we'll turn now back to our prayer books, page 586, Aleinu L'Shabech, and you can join with me again, the bottom, page 586. Aleinu L'Shabech L'Adon HaKol, Latit Gedula Liotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegoye HaRatzot, Velo Samanu Kemishpechot Adama, Shelo Sama Chelkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam, Anachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim, Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Akadosh Baruch Hu. Page 591 in the middle of the page. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. We'll turn now to page 598 as we prepare to recite the Mourner's Kaddish, and we'll begin first by thinking of those in our community who passed in recent months. Dr. John Aberkin, Morris Dickstein, Linda Danath, Ellen Frank, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Arthur Grossman, Gerald Hirsch, Mark Joseph, Deirdre Klein, Jeanette Kopp, Leo Leibowitz, Audrey Lubo, Morty Lynn, Jerry Monroe, Nancy Nagel, Harry Olstein, Geraldine Rosen, Harriet Roth, Jeannie Rubin, Howard Schreier, Dorothy Shupnick, Paul Silver, Marlise Silverberg, Blanche Sklar, Rita Sandra Snyder, Joan Strong Tangzilius, Virginia Tizer, and Faith Diskin. We also mark the art sites that occurred during the last week for Joan Rocker Newman, William Adelberg, Daniel Bernstein, Harry Bernstein, Robert Brill, Sam Bromberg, Minnie Bryant, Hyman Schwatzky, Dean Diamond, Nellie Eckstein, Herbert Fowler, Estelle Fox, Mark Goldfarb, Paul Goldman, Victor Hellman, Ruth Hesse, Howard Kirschenbaum, Mortimer Lamchick, Marcia Michaels, Mary Newmark, Kate O'Koon, Hans Oppenheimer, Millie Raff, Jack Rifkin, Edith Ann Rodney, Alan Saltzman, Dorothy Schroeder, and Burton Wortell. In addition to those that we mentioned, of course, if you're on the Zoom, you're welcome to mention other names if we didn't read them, and for those at home to say the names of your loved ones as well. And I'll invite the mourners to join me on page 596 as we recite together the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayichon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, b'agalav zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'li'almei almayim. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav uyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for blessing. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Before we conclude our service, we have some important announcements. The first is to join us, of course, for Shabbat services that'll be live streamed tomorrow, beginning at 9:30 with Cantor Lauren and myself. That, again, is available on our website, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Also, to please join us tomorrow for Shabbat Torah study at 12 o'clock on Zoom, using the Torah, a women's commentary, and facilitated by our wonderful teacher and friend, Leah Oppenheimer, who will be focusing on this week's portion, as I said, of Parshat Bo. And again, that's 12 o'clock on Zoom. And then in a continuation of our learning and a great, great opportunity to study with one of our great teachers and a member of our community long before my time, Rabbi Minna Bromberg, who is going to be teaching on next week's portion on Parshat Beshalach. And she'll be teaching a workshop and a discussion entitled Song of the Sea, Shirat Hayam, Singing the Change We Want to See in the World. So apropos of a conversation about how do we make the change in the world we want to see, as you hopefully know, Rabbi Minna is both a brilliant and talented teacher and also one of the most beautiful and pure voices I've ever heard. So she's going to combine her many talents and her many skills. And one of the great opportunities to learn with somebody who is literally in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, who'll be joining us by Zoom. And, again, while we wish we were all together, sometimes technology is a wonderful thing. So I really want to invite everybody again to join us. That is on Sunday, 11 to 1 o'clock. And just a reminder that for this event, you do need to sign up through Eventbrite. Regular Torah study is just the regular link, but this Sunday, please do sign up through Eventbrite. If you have any questions about any of that, you can email me and I'll be happy to walk you through how to do that. And again, we really welcome all. And although I haven't seen it, I'm told there was a great article about it in the Sag Harbor Express. So if you get the Sag Harbor Express, there is apparently a great article. So again, credit to our leaders of our Women's Torah Commentary Committee, Ruth Joseph and Leah Oppenheimer and Margaret Bromberg, who really put a tremendous amount of effort into making this really a great opportunity for us to learn together again on Sunday. A few other items coming up this week. Monday, Nida Mitzvah will meet at 11:30. Hebrew School is at 3:30, again, virtual through the rest of the month, as are Shabbat services and programs through the end of the month. My class on Wednesday on Abraham, Joshua, Eshel, and the Prophets is at 12. Hebrew School will be later that day at 3:30. My Friday class on the Journey to the Heart of the Siddur is Friday at 9:15. And if you're feeling like you've missed the boat and you can't join, all those classes are meant to be drop-in. And if you're not sure if they're worth your time, you can ask Ann about Friday mornings. You can ask Warren about Wednesdays. We have a pretty good time. I think we learned some good stuff. Not to put you on the spot, but I certainly have a good time. I learn a lot from the experience. And again, just a reminder that Shabbat services, as I said, will be virtual through the end of the month. So you can join us on Zoom or you can watch live stream. Just to highlight a few other things coming up this month, we have a virtual tour of the Jewish Museum's current exhibit, The Hair with the Amber Eyes, on January 13th. On January 16th, in connection to the observance of King Day, we'll be screening the film Rosenwald, which is the incredible story of how Julius Rosenwald, one of the founders of Sears and Roebuck, joined together with the African-American communities of the South to help build schools. We'll also have an opportunity with a Q&A with the filmmaker, Aviva Kempner. So again, that is on January 16th. And later on in the month, we have a return of our always favorite trivia night on January 20th. So please join us again on Zoom for that. So the only other announcement for this evening, which is something of a bummer, is that Cantor Lawrence Practicum is not going to be taking place in person this month. So, we are hoping that there will be an opportunity. And I think, Lauren, you said in February. So I hope we'll get a chance for that. And, but it'll give you a little bit more time and maybe, a little bit more time for us to get our ducks in a row so that we're all able to watch you. But I know it will be great when it happens. And, again, right now, the best thing we can all do is to be safe. And again, considerate of others. See, there's a theme through the whole thing, right? We connect the points, right? Think about others, not just ourselves. So with that, again, I hope to see you at some point, especially on Sunday. Really, please come, tell your friends. It's going to be a great learning opportunity. But in the meanwhile, we're going to turn it back to Cantor Lauren for a closing song before we do Kiddush.
So we will turn to page 644, the bottom of 644. עבדו את אדוני בשמחה, עבדו את אדוני בשמחה בו, לפניו ברננה, לפניו ברננה. עבדו את אדוני בשמחה, עבדו את אדוני בשמחה בו, לפניו ברננה, לפניו ברננה.
Andrew Lauren. I just now noticed that I have this like incredible, almost from the heavens light here, which I think is pretty great. I wish I'd taken advantage of that before, but good timing for Kiddush, I think, actually. It goes right there. That's perfect. So if you have a Kiddush cup with you, you'd like to join with me, we're on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך מאהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת אמן. לחיים. L'chaim and Shabbat Shalom to everybody. We'll say a good night to all of our friends on the stream. Anybody who's on the Zoom would like to stick around, you are more than welcome. Again,